What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again. And this time we are here with Sean of Phineas. Thank you so much for being here today, man. It's great to have you.
Dude, appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here, and what a great time to have you here because we got the brand new album, The Fire Itself, coming out very soon. Is this just like a continuation or just the good old follow up to what Dark Flag is going to be, or is this almost kind of like a new beginning for Phineas in a way?
That's a good question. I would say a little bit of both, but I think that musicality wise and just let's say focus of vision is a bit more there this time around, and so I think that you could describe it as a new beginning. Because I mean, there's a lot of things different, that are different about life, and a lot of things that are different about the band since Dark Flag happened. But in another sense, I also view it as just a progression of the band. So,
Do you feel that the first single you released, In the Night, is almost a good representation of what the entirety of this album is going to sound like, or is that just the first piece of the puzzle?
So I think so. I think it is a good representation of the album as a whole, although it does have its own uniqueness about it in the track listing. So, but as far as like what we do and like the kind of brand of metalcore that we like to play and we like to write, I think that it definitely kind of hits all of the different things that we like to do. I don't know if that's super vague, but it's I do think it's a good representation, because then you dive into the rest of the record and you got at the same time that the rest of the record is different, you'll also, I don't know, to me it felt like the right one to release first. And our bass player and our drummer, actually, Bryce and Isaiah, were the guys really pushing for that one to be the first song that everybody hears.
Yeah.
They really wanted to get that one out there. But that's not to say they don't like the other songs. And I mean, yeah.
Well, you mentioned like your brand of metalcore, and that's something I actually really wanted to talk about, because when I hear Phineas, and I'm talking everything from the God Machine to now, because like, this is their fifth album, I've always thought that Phineas had both like the old school, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, All That Remains sort of metalcore style, but then a lot of like the new school style from bands like Bless the Fall, or even a band like Beartooth, or even like earlier versions of I Prevail or something like that. So like, it almost seems like that Phineas is like the perfect bridge between like an older an older school and a newer school sound in a way. That's my input of it.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I mean, we definitely all all of us here all really geek out on the early 2000s metalcore, and I mean that there's still so many records that we go back to and listen to and just love. There's just something about that like time period and that metalcore, like, I mean, or at least I'm talking about Unearth's the Oncoming Storm, or End of Heartache, or
Fall of
Pressure
Ideals.
the Hinges, or like
Fall of Ideals.
Say that again.
Fall of Ideals by All That Remains.
I'm gonna say this might be weird to you. I have not listened to All That Remains that much. I have heard 6, and that's about it.
All right, well their version of like The Reason by Hoobastank in a way, you know what I mean? That is so like, all right, at least you heard that song. At least you heard that song.
I'm sorry to
No,
disappoint, man.
It's not that sacrilege.
There's a lot of music I still gotta listen to, but if it's around that time frame and that metalcore, then I will like it. I just have so much music I have to get around to,
Well, Well, let's get into my favorite debate to do in every interview because I've
Okay.
had this discussion with a lot of metalcore peers, and I ask people, "What is metalcore?" Right? And the predominant answer I get is it's music that has singing and screaming in it. I'm like, okay, so is that going to make Opeth metalcore or Fear Factory metalcore or Soilwork metalcore? Like, to you, what makes metalcore metalcore? Cue the Jeopardy music.
Yeah. No, for real. I mean, that's a really good question. So to me, it would be, um, man, like more. Okay, it's a mix. Obviously, it's a mix of things, right? We're mixing together the words metal and hardcore, right? But I would say okay, things. Man, that's not even. There's not a single like true definition because I keep on wanting to say, oh well, it's the syncopated chugs and kick pedal, but I mean obviously that appears in metal, you know. Hardcore you kind of get away from that, you know, but it takes like the aggressive elements and like the man. You can even say it's more like guitar focused hardcore, you know, because there are hardcore bands out there who have very good guitar players. So it's that's a really tough question.
Yeah.
Screaming and singing, both, you know, that covers like every single description is going to cover like what half of it, right? And it's really hard to nail down. But I would say at least for what I hear when I hear metalcore, I hear guitar focus, I hear syncopated kick beats with chugs, and doesn't have to be singing or screaming. I've heard a handful of metalcore bands where there's, you know, there's no singing. There might be melody, you know, like. And this band kind of floats on the line, but like Darkest Hour, like for a long time they didn't have singing. But
I think a good example would be Currents. You toured with them on the As I Lay Dying tour.
Oh sure. Yeah.
So
no, definitely, right? Like they got the syncopated breakdowns, they have the singing, they have the screaming. It's all there's a lot of guitar focused aspects to it. But yeah, Darkest Hour is one of those bands that I would define as metalcore, even though they kind of float between that and like just metal, you know. But then they have other songs that are entirely just like, it's just thrash, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like thrash hardcore. And so it's like, it's difficult to nail down.
Definitely.
But I hope that gave some sort of an idea of what I think anyways.
I think you and I proved that it is the most confusing and most overused word in metal history. So
For sure.
Yep. Now, one thing I always like asking vocalists is you know, because I've always admired the lyrics of Phineas. Like with every album you put out, I'm always excited to see what is the band gonna say, what are they gonna address this time, where are they coming from this time. Have you, as a vocalist, always needed to hear the music before you came up with the lyrics, or do you sometimes have a lyrical idea that could help influence the direction of the music?
So I think it kind of works its way out in both ways. But depends on the situation. And what I mean is that I'll be, you know, going about my day and I'll be thinking about things, be like, oh, hey, that could be a cool breakdown call out. Or, and then, you know, I'll kind of take that. And then when I hear the music to it, I can kind of, you know, go about piecing it together. But, but the general approach I take is I write music first. And typically it happens that way because like I write a handful of guitar stuff for us as well. And so I'll sit down with a riff, right? And I'll be working out how it's going to flow. But because I am, you know, singing, you know, or because I am the singer or vocalist, I want to leave space for there to be, something unpredictable, or for there to be, oh, I want to put emphasis on this part, so we should have a pause here that goes into this, or, so I kind of try and leave myself room to work. And then when I write lyrics to it, it's my job to make it sound like the lyrics came before the music.
Do you like to leave it open to interpretation, or do you try to engage the listener into the music? Because I think that you have like a literal aspect and a metaphorical aspect behind your music. I think you approach the lyrics from all different directions. At least that's my way of understanding it. So like, do you like to leave it open to interpretation, or do you try to maybe engage the listener into the meaning as much as the music itself?
I don't want to say that I try and walk that line, and there's a reason for that. I try and walk a line between I wouldn't say abstract or vague, but I would say open. I try and walk the line between open and directly addressing something, because a lot of the way that I interpret music, or I hear music, is at least for me, like, I'll listen to my favorite band and they're singing about something. Your first thought whenever you hear something is to immediately relate it to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to be so direct that somebody can't do that, and somebody can't make that song their own.
Yeah. And I think
you know what I mean?
I think it's like a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation, because like if people would say if your lyrics are too direct, it's like, oh, it's not open enough to interpretation. But if you leave it very open to interpretation, people could criticize it for being too vague. So I think you do walk that fine line very well, and I'm very impressed that you're able to do it for 5 albums straight.
Well, thanks, man. It's like these are songs that we wrote, right? But we're not necessarily completely writing them for ourselves, like we want to connect with people. And I think that like you said, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like if you write something so direct that it couldn't mean anything else, or somebody couldn't apply it to their life, like people just aren't going to. It's not that I want like streams or anything. I just want people to listen and feel something. You know what I mean? So like, I don't want them to stop feeling something, so I don't want them to skip over the song. Yeah. I like, that's important to me, is the connection, right? And that's, yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm kind of getting lost in the weeds.
No, it's all good.
But it's important to me to walk that line. That way somebody can look at the lyrics, they can make it their own, right? And they can apply their own meaning, which generally it's pretty dead on with what I'm talking about, even if I'm being like more vague than than the norm, which is pretty incredible, and I think that it kind of speaks to a general connection that people have,
Do you need like to look for inspiration? Like, is there a lot of research that's involved in the making of the music, and do you have like a usual place that you go to in order to cultivate ideas, or does inspiration sometimes strike when you least expect it?
A mix of all of it, man. Like I said earlier, like sometimes I'll be going about my day and I'll think of something, or I'll be going through something and need to write something down in a notepad. But there also is a definite like intentional withdrawing that kind of comes with me writing, where I need to like lock myself in a room. Yeah. I need to put my headphones in not necessarily to like listen to something, not even listen to the song that I'm writing to, but to like, I don't know, like I wish I had a sensory deprivation chamber, that would be sick, right?
Yeah.
But like to calm myself down and actually allow myself to kind of be vulnerable. And like also I really like lists. And so I have a notebook from like every single record where I'll just write down in lists like what I want the songs to be out. And so there's a general like skeleton that kind of comes into play. And because my brain, first off, naturally, my brain is just so scattered all the time. And it's really hard for me to multitask. And so I have to write it down in a list. So when I'm done with one thing, I can remember like, oh yeah, I have this other idea for a song, and then start diving into that, but really the thing that helps me the most is just giving myself time and allowing myself to feel comfortable enough and free enough to like let go of the things going on around me, and really just sit down and think about what I want to communicate. And it's very different going from the fire, like going from Dark Flag to the fire itself, like drastically different, because I poured myself into books with Dark Flag, and reading and researching, and through history and whatnot of, North Korea and what it's like to be there, or, what they're going through and what the long history has been, and how drastic the difference is economically, and I mean, really in all facets of life between North Korea and South Korea, and our relations with them, and how China stepped in during the Korean War, all of these things, right? Yeah. And I needed to read up, because I made the choice that I wanted to write about this. And then with the fire itself, it was, it's been 4 years, and
the world has changed quite a lot.
What's that?
The world has changed quite a lot.
Yeah, right? It has changed drastically. And all of us, every single person had a terrible 2020. Yeah. Unless you're one of the, 1 in a million who didn't lose any family members, or didn't have any trouble adjusting to working from home, or lost their job, didn't lose their job, or, but that's few and far between. I feel like the vast majority of people, not just in the States, but all across the world, in their lockdowns, had a very, very long time to look in the mirror and realize what's important and what's not, and take account of the things in their life that they like, and the things in their life that they don't like. And also come to the realization that when your life is going 100 miles per hour, and then that gets stopped, and you're put in your coping strategies get put to the test, and things can get really hard. And so, I know everybody had a hard 2020. And so, mine was no different. I had a horrible year, and pandemic and lockdown aside, was put in some positions with my family that I wouldn't wish on my worst nightmare, or I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Sorry, I said that wrong. It was my nightmare. And so, the fire itself, like the entire record, is about me coming to grips with who I am, and me learning how to operate as a human being and as a broken human being. So, there was it's one thing if you're like doing research, and it's a very research is a very pragmatic thing. Like, you're just trying to find out facts, right? So there's that. And then there's like the inspiration side, where my inspiration for the fire itself was going through the hardest time of my life. So
Do you and if you don't mind me asking, because
yeah,
we're talking about the evolution of who you are as an artist and everything, but this year is also the anniversary of the God Machine. In fact, if I'm wrong, the anniversary was like last week or something like that.
yeah,
July like 18th or 19th or something like that. And
yeah.
so I was wondering if you could take me back to that time. At this point, I just finished my junior year of high school, and preparing for my final year of high school. I just want to know, like, what was the mindset of the God Machine album, because it's the debut album, and there's I feel like that album, like every debut I hear, regardless if it's a timeless debut album like Appetite for Destruction or Hybrid Theory, or if it's a debut that sometimes just gets lost into riff purgatory, as I call it. Like, it has this debut charm to it, this underground charm to it. I was curious to what your mindset was going into that.
That was 10 years ago, bro. That's hard to remember where my mind was at.
I was just getting my license.
I mean, I was 22 or 23. In my mind, still very much so a child.
Yeah.
And, the bright lights, if you will, of the touring and music scene were in my head. Not that it was all magic or whatever, but and also not that I've like lost that like feeling now, because I feel more driven about our music than I feel like I ever have. But I know back then, I mean, I was just stoked to release an album, man. And that was like years and years in the making. Years and years and different band members, and there was a lot of growing up, not enough, but there's some, to me, like I like that album. It's hard for me to listen to it because I feel like there are some lyrics that I can't understand anymore just because I'm at a different place in life, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, of course. I would certainly hope that you are at a different place in life, like, because but like, and to be fair, like, and again, I'm a big fan of Phineas. Like, I've been following you since the God Machine, and I've always said that Phineas was one of the last discoveries I had when I was in high school. So like,
That's awesome, man.
And to see the evolution from that to The Last Word Is Yours to Speak to Till the End to Dark Flag to now, it just seems like I don't consider one Phineas record to be a continuation of the other. I think it's just a never-ending continuation of evolution, and that's something that
Cool.
I find so admirable about the band.
Well, dude, thanks, man. That means a lot. I mean, that's affirming because we're trying to, we're not trying to do like this eternal like one-upping of heaviness or whatever, but we are trying to be better at what we do every single time.
You succeed.
And and the music has grown more personal and more aggressive, but at the same time more melodic over the years, and so that's what we're going for, man. We're going for progression. We're not trying to write things in crazy time signatures or whatever. We want to headbang and we want to groove to it, but also get something out of it.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. What a great way to end the middle of the week night to be able to talk about this. Is there just anything else with Phineas that you would like to promote? Like, can we be expecting to see you on the road? Please bring the band to New York City, because I'm still bitter that you weren't on the New York City date on the Like Moths to Flames tour in 2018. I'm still bitter.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta pick his bone about that once at least on this interview.
Oh, man. Hey, I'm sorry, bro. That was... Yo, you know what? That was actually, we paid for that. Let me tell you, man. That was that was one of the longest stretches of 48 hours I think any of us in the band has ever had. We flew into Germany, played that festival, played 2 sets, immediately flew back. Upon getting back, blew out a tire in New York. our trailer tire.
Oh, and that's the last place you want a tire to blow out.
Well, it was like almost on a toll road, and like AAA was telling us they can't pick us up because there's no, they're not allowed on toll roads. And I was like, I mean, so we're just like up a creek? Like, what are you telling me? Like,
Yeah.
what do we pay you for? Like, and then randomly a tow truck drove by, pulled over, and asked us if we need help. It was actually insane, man. Like,
Yeah.
I still remember that dude. I wish I could remember his name. I can't because I'm old, but
But we'll see you on the road quite a bit for this cycle, right?
So I mean, we inevitably got to line up some shows, right?
Yep.
So right now we're just focusing on the record and focusing on giving that the attention it deserves. But we're absolutely going to play some shows. So I don't have a time frame for you, and I can't say anything that I can't say anything either way, because then if something doesn't happen or whatever, then people get mad at me. So,
fair enough. And this interview is going to be uploaded later tonight, and people will get mad at me too. So best.
Gotcha.
But thank you so much, Sean. Everybody, we are here with Sean of Phineas. Be sure to check out the fire itself. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.